And just like that, another month has passed. I didn't do nearly as well as I wanted to, and I say that every month for our wrap up, but this month just wasn't it.
I think I read the same amount I always read.
Okay, good.
Like 7 to 8 books.
I know I'm still on track for my Goodreads goal, but I was just in such a bad slump this month. I had to force myself to read, which I hate doing.
The month just ended yesterday, and we both just completed a book today. I had some really great reads, and then I had a not so great read. So it was a pretty decent month. Up first, I read Mile High by Liz Tomford. You guys were right. This was so freaking good and right up my alley. I actually really liked this one because it is a sports romance, but it was like a grown sports romance. Like, this man is in professional hockey league, not like the college stuff. So this was the first one that I've ever read like that. So Xander's is the professional hockey player and Stevie is the flight attendant, and they just had such a fun and unique banter. This was one of those books where I was like kicking my feet up in the air, all blushing for no reason. Based off the synopsis, I was very worried that I wasn't going to like Xander's because he comes off very cocky and just not my kind of man. But then you get to know why he's like that, and you get to understand that's not truly who he is. And I fell for it and I loved him. This definitely is a longer romance book, and I don't love when romance books are like over 400 pages, but it did move really fast and I was entertained the whole way through, so I'm not even mad about it. I love the topics of mental health and body positivity. There was really nothing I didn't like about this book, and so many people said the second book is even better. It goes over Stevie's brother, and I really liked him in this book. I gave this one a 4.5 stars, so I'm hoping the next one will be a full 5 stars for me.
I started off the month with Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This was a spooky, fun fantasy YA book. In this book, we are following Signa. She's had a really rough upbringing, and then she ends up at the Hawthorne's Manor. When the mother of the house meets an untimely death, Signa does everything she can to solve the mystery, and her accomplice is Death, which I love. Death was a character in this book. He was absolutely my favorite. It's a murder mystery. There's like little twists. It's a spooky vibe. I absolutely loved it. I do want to read the second one immediately because the ending had me like gasping. I did give this one a 4 star, but this made me realize that I was in a slump because normally I can read a YA book in like 1 to 2 sittings, and this took me like over a week. But I did really enjoy it, and everyone who was waiting to know if I liked it, I loved it.
Probably my favorite romance I read this month was Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez just understands the assignment. She knows how to make likable characters that are super funny and just get you on their side. I also like that she includes really heavy topics as well, so it's a lot more than just a romance story. In this one, we learn a lot about the disease ALS. So we're following Vanessa and Adrian, and Vanessa has found herself thrown into being a mother basically. So she's like raising her niece, and her job is a YouTuber, but she's like a travel YouTuber. So right now she's just trying to figure out how to take care of this child, and Adrian, who is her apartment's next door neighbor, has to hear all this crying, and he's like, no ma'am, it is 4 a.m. I can't sleep, you can't sleep, like let me help you. And he's high. So of course she's gonna let him help her, and they have this really cute connection and they bond over this child. I mean, normally I don't love children in books, but this was just so sweet and innocent and wholesome, and it was a really fun time. I was a completely crying mess at the end of it, and I was crying even more when I read the author's note of Abby Jimenez saying that Vanessa was inspired by a real life YouTuber who was battling a disease. I did give this book a 4.75, and I don't normally do that, but there was just a few miscommunication moments that are holding me back from giving it that full 5, but it was still so good. Probably one of my favorite romance books I've read the whole year, but it's just that little lack of communication that I just can't. It can't be a full 5 for me, but it was still really good, and I can't wait to read more of her books.
Next up, I have Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. This was my first H.D. Carlton book, and this plot was kind of crazy. We're following Sawyer. She's basically running away from her past, and what she does in order to survive is sleeps with men, steals their identity, and then kind of lives off their money for a little bit until she moves to the next town and does it again. What ends up happening is one of her victims finds out, and for revenge, he decides to take her out on a boat in the middle of the ocean. A storm occurs, and they end up stranded together on a remote island in this lighthouse with a creepy old caretaker. I definitely didn't love it. It was one I had to force myself to read, but looking back, now that it's no longer fresh on my mind, it was an interesting enough plot. It was spicy, it was creepy, there were plot twists. It had an insane ending that actually I kind of am satisfied with, so there's not too much to hate about it. Just know that I did kind of struggle a little bit through it. I think the reason is because I couldn't connect with the characters, and you guys know if I can't connect to the characters, I don't care about the smut, and there's a lot of it, and the story just doesn't hit the same when you don't really care about the characters. So that's the only issues I had with it. There's like spooky aspects throughout because the lighthouse is supposed to be like haunted. A bunch of people like supposedly have died there. They keep hearing like ghosts and like chains dragging on the, like it's crazy, and it was fun. So let me not hate on it too much. It was a good time. Not my favorite of the month though.
Even though you guys pretty much chose what we read this month on our Instagram poll, one of the books that I really wanted to win didn't win, surprisingly, because you guys have been waiting for me to read this book and I have been waiting to read this book. So I read it anyway, and it was Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This was actually the one that I just happened to squeeze in the last day of the month. I made sure I read all of the books that you guys did vote for before I read this one. In this one, we're following Yasmin and Josiah, and they have babies together, they have a business together, they were married, they had such a beautiful marriage, and then something happened and they ended up separating, and now we're following both of them and we're seeing where they are and how they feel. And let me just say, this was such a grown, raw, real story. There was never a moment in this book that felt like some of the other romances that I read that are kind of unrealistic or a little bit childish. This was like serious stuff going down in here, so I did really appreciate it for that, and I can see why it is so loved because it does reflect such a real and raw relationship. I actually really did love Kennedy Ryan's writing. I loved our main character Yasmin. I felt like I was her bestie. I felt like she was telling me everything that she's been going through in her life, and I was just following her through it. The reasoning on why her and Josiah separated, I wasn't expecting, and that was like super painful and heartbreaking to read about. I did enjoy getting both Josiah and Yasmin's point of view because sometimes there were things that they didn't want to communicate to each other just to keep everything safe and keep their business safe and their relationship with their children. There was a lot that was unsaid because of them wanting to respect each other. So that was good to see miscommunication done respectfully and correctly, like not trying to step on anyone's boundaries. I know this kind of romance book isn't for everyone though, so if you are someone who is interested in reading more of that grown-up romance that covers really heavy topics, then I definitely recommend this, but there are some things that I would check trigger warnings about because I just wasn't expecting. I ended up giving it a 4 stars.
A book that I read and absolutely loved this month was I Killed Zoe Spanos by Kit Frick. This was fantastic. I mean, surprisingly so. It's basically just a YA murder mystery, but it's half told in like podcast form, which is really cool. So we are following Anna. She arrives in this new town for a summer nannying gig. When she gets there, she is hoping for a fresh start, but she basically finds a community on edge after the disappearance of a local girl named Zoe. 2 months later, Anna is charged with manslaughter, but her confession has holes in it, and Martina, the host of this Missing Zoe podcast, is determined to find out what actually happened to Zoe Spanos. So much happened in this book. The writing I actually really enjoyed. It was done so well. The mystery was done so well. I love the way that the chapters were set up. I know when we were doing the reading sprint, I was a little bit unsure when I started this book because it does have like first person and third person, but it ended up working out perfect. The podcast parts, if you listen to on audiobook, is super cool because they have like background music and the different characters and like the different sounds. It definitely enhanced the story. So if you're going to read this, definitely listen along to the audio. I was a little bit hesitant about where they were gonna go with the ending, but I actually super enjoyed it. I found it satisfying. I gave it a 4.5, which in my opinion is like a perfect book. So I definitely recommend. I do want to read other books by this author.
I did read The Perfect Marriage. This one has been sitting on my shelf for way too long, so it was time to read it, and I did enjoy it. I was really hoping that the author was gonna go in a different direction, but I mean, I was still locked in. I still read this story. I was still interested, but I think it was still really entertaining. It was a short read. This is going to turn into an adaptation pretty soon. I'm interested to see how it's all going to play out on screen. I think, like you said though, when you read this book, being in this man's point of view was probably the worst reading experience I've ever had. This top is always my favorite. Would you defend your husband if he was accused of killing his mistress? That's this whole book. So being in his point of view for that is super annoying and exhausting. And I think that's why I didn't love it, but I liked it. I gave this a 3.5.
As you guys know, we did a whole reading vlog and did not like Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I did want to give it another shot, and I impulse bought book 2 because I thought the cover was going out of print, but I'm actually so glad I did because I just read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. And I mean, I finished it at 6 a.m. this morning, and I can successfully say that this book redeemed the series in my opinion. Because I was so behind on reading this month, I asked you guys on my Instagram which book you wanted me to read by the end of the month, and this is the one that won, and I'm so glad it did because I honestly probably wouldn't have picked it up if I didn't read it this month. I thought this was significantly better than book 1. I don't know if it's because I went into this with such low expectations after book 1 or what, but I don't think so because I ended up really enjoying this. We are following Daisy, and she has been an orphan most of her life. Her brother Julian has basically raised her, but he's kind of like a mob boss. He's in a gang, so it's a very dangerous lifestyle that they've been living. So we do get Daisy and Julian's point of view, but we also get Christian's point of view. Christian is Daisy's friends with benefits, and it gets messy because Daisy likes Christian, Christian likes Magnolia, but Magnolia is head over heels for BJ. So it's like one of those little, I don't even know what shape that is. It's messy, but that is what makes it entertaining. I do like that we get to see parts of book 1, but in Christian and Daisy's point of view. It definitely reminded me of a bunch of stuff that I completely forgot happened in Magnolia Parks. I also thought it was super cool. We got Julian's point of view. We got an inside of like his workings and like his little business. And we got to see his relationship with Daisy a lot through their point of views. I did think the third act breakup was a little too long and a little too dramatic. There's no like wrap up, close, conclusion at the end of this book. You're definitely gonna have to read their second book to get any sort of answers, so I'm kind of annoyed about that. I don't want to read Magnolia Parks 2 though, so please let me know if I'm able to just skip over that one and read Daisy Hates 2 because I cannot with Magnolia Parks. She is the most unlikable character that I've ever had to read about, and this book just shines a light on that even more. I do not like her. If anything, this book kind of made me like BJ more, but Magnolia is just not it. I'm sorry, I can't deal with her. Overall, I did think it was entertaining. Gave it a 4-star. Please let me know if I could read their second book without reading Magnolia.
I finally read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I absolutely loved The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I think I gave it a 5-star. This is another STEM romance, such a fun rom-com. There was definitely a lot more science terminology that kept distracting me and taking me right out of the story because then I'm trying to figure out what are they saying. This is the one where Elsie fake dates people for money and she ends up fake dating Jack's brother, and Jack is like this big hotshot guy basically of where her dream job is. I did really like how Jack helped Elsie get that character growth that she needed. There was a bunch of Twilight references that I really did like, and I absolutely loved the Adam and Olive cameo.
Oh,
it was so cute. I needed it. It made the story better for me. I missed them. I love them. I did end up giving this one a 3.5 stars. I liked this one, but I didn't love this one as much as The Love Hypothesis.
Our book club book for this month was Alice Feeney's His and Hers, so we both read this. I feel like going into it, the bar was set so high because we already knew we loved Alice Feeney's writing.
Rock, Paper, Scissors was a 5-star for me. I think Daisy Darker was a 4.5. 4.5 is like a fantastic rating. His and Hers actually came out before Daisy Darker and Rock, Paper, Scissors, so that makes me feel a little bit better.
This is a murder mystery. We're following Anna, who is a news reporter working on this case, as well as Jack, who is a detective on this case until he becomes a suspect himself.
Everybody in this book was super unlikable, and for me, there has to be at least one person that I like or I'm just not here for it. I'm not having a good time, and that's how I felt. I didn't like anybody, so there was a disconnect for me.
I agree with that, and I think something about the writing just didn't match the quality of her other books for me. I know a couple people in the book club ended up DNFing it because of the pacing and everything in the book. I will say though, I thought the mystery was so good. It was so much more dark and twisty than I thought it was gonna be. None of my predictions were right, so I loved it for that.
It was a 3.5 for me until something at the very end happened that really did throw me off. And then I made it a 3.75 after that.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad. I did appreciate the short chapters, and I did listen to the book on audio while reading the book, and I think that definitely helped.
I also gave it a 3.75, and I know the book club ratings, kind of like the final tally, was a 3.9. That's not bad. It was still super fun to read it with you guys. The chapters got a little confusing though for the book club chat room.
That was the first red flag.
Yeah, they didn't number the chapters.
Yeah.
So it made it super confusing for the chat rooms. We apologize for that, but it was still fun to see everyone's like predictions and thoughts throughout the book. If you're not already a part of our book club, make sure to join because we are going to be kicking off September's book really soon, Divine Rivals 1 by Rebecca Ross. Insane. We can't wait to read this. It is also on KU, but we're going to start reading that together soon, so make sure to join with the link in the description if you haven't already.
Next, we have the books that we read in our 24-hour reading vlog. I read If He Had Been With Me and the Atlas 6. I absolutely love this one. This one was so good. I'm not going to go too into it because we do talk a lot about these books in our 24-hour reading vlog. This was a really sad and powerful and realistic story. I think the reason I didn't give it a 5-star was because I personally would have enjoyed it more if the prologue didn't kind of tell us how things were gonna end. I think I will remember Finn and Autumn's relationship forever, and I will definitely be reading Finn's point of view when it does come out later this year. And the Atlas 6. Boy, did I have high hopes for this one. There's 6 very magical people. They go to this academy. There's only going to be 5 who make it. That sounds amazing. I don't know what happened in here to just throw that out the window because that's not even what happens in the book. You're just following these 6 horrible people, figuring out their powers, and everybody just wants to be with everybody. And it just wasn't a good time. The only people I cared about were Libby and Nico, and I was so sad whenever we weren't in their point of view. I just was really disappointed. Some people love it. I know some people hate it. So it's just one of those books where you got to read it and figure out how you feel. And 2 stars is how I feel.
I was a little apprehensive going into these because of how I felt about Does It Hurt earlier this month, but I'm so glad I decided to read this series because it was definitely better, in my opinion, than the first book I read. If there's one thing I will say is that these are definitely labeled dark romance for a reason. There's such heavy dark topics that are in both of these books. Check trigger warnings, please. I'm begging you, because these were probably one of the most dark books I've read yet, just because of certain things that go on. Haunting Adeline was a stalker romance. I will admit, and you can go see in the video, I did not love it the first chunk of the book, but somehow at the end they just get me, and by the end of it I'm definitely rooting for the couple. I'm so attached. I need to read book 2. I'm just gonna skim over some of the dark scenes. And in Satan's Affair, we're following Sibby, who decides to basically rid the world of evil people, and she can tell people are evil by the way that they smell. It's a super interesting, fast-paced short read. Perfect for the fall season, honestly. It's like a spicy reverse harem type of book with like a crazy twist at the end. So I really liked both of these. I believe I gave this one a 4 and then this one a 3, so I recommend both. But I'm so glad I decided to read these because now I know I do like her writing. Just Does It Hurt, wasn't it?
Seeing these here, I really thought there was more, but it's just this.
It's always how it goes. See, technically though, we should have a full other book for book club book.
You're right. I will not be purchasing it.
No?
No. I think it's been a pretty successful month. We had some great books and some decent books.
Thank you guys again for voting what we read this past month. It was super fun to read whatever you guys chose for us. I'm behind 2 books, so that's definitely 2 books that I have to read next month, but I will get them down because I know you guys want to hear my thoughts on those.
We did already put out our September TBR, and at this point I am just ready to move on and start fresh with the month and get to those fall reads.
That's pretty much it for today's video. Let us know in the comments what your favorite read of August was.
What was yours?
Maybe Haunting Adeline. Super good. A lot, but good. What was yours?
These are all really good contenders. Life's Too Short or If He Had Been With Me are pretty freaking good.
Reminder to join our book club if you haven't already. We will be kicking off September this week. Also, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. The month ended yesterday. We squeezed in as many books as we could.
We both squeezed an extra one in.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
First up, I read Mile High by Liz Tom Ford. What a name. Tom Ford. Okay.
Sounds rich.
It does. It's because Tom Ford is that brand, right?
Tom Ford. Dude, I didn't even put that together.
Tom Ford is, yeah. So, like, of course, I'm gonna let, she's gonna let him.
This is the one with the geriatric dog.
This is the one with the dog. And by the way, that Chihuahua was hilarious. Because I would have felt bad if I read a book that you guys didn't vote for.
Not me doing that.
Oh, okay. I will say this one definitely was a little bit more technical, scientifical, just too much for me. It was the sponsored cheese that kept throwing me off a little bit. It definitely wasn't one of my favorite ones. I don't think I would recommend it to anybody.
Oh my god.
That messed up.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
just came out
recommend
strong. Basically a murder mystery. We're following him and her.